Hi. Thanks for coming on this snowy night. Let's hope we don't get too much before we get through this whole meeting. So it's a little after 7 right now. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We'll start off with a Pledge of Allegiance. The flag's over the entrance you came in. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, well, once again, thanks for coming out tonight. For those people that have cell phones and pagers and all that kind of stuff, could you please put them on vibrate or silence them, or movie theater mode, whatever you want to put it in. The exits to the room are the ones that you probably came in. There's an exit through these doors and to the right and outside to the back of the building. There's also an exit over here, my left, your right. Restrooms are out that way if you need them. I'd just like to ask everybody be courteous to one another as you usually are. The topic that we're going to be discussing tonight, there's a lot of different opinions about it. People are going to come up to the microphone and give different varying opinions. I'd just like to ask that you respect their opinions as individuals. We're not here to vote on this warrant article. We're not here to change this warrant article. We're just here to be sponges, okay? Just soak up the information, have all your questions answered. If you have questions, ask the questions so that you walk out of here with a full understanding of the warrant article. The warrant article and other warrant articles are going to be presented at the deliberative session. That's going to be coming up on Saturday, February 8th, right here in this gymnasium. We're going to start this year with the school warrant articles at 10 o'clock in the morning. When we get through with that, whatever time that be, we'll take a short recess and the town warrant articles will be presented. The school is working in conjunction with the town on trying to get some assistance for childcare in the building. And I think the last I heard, you're also going to try to have some food service, perhaps.
At 11 o'clock.
Okay.
Starting at 11.
Okay, so that's working then. So that's good. Okay. So in front of you here tonight are members of the school board, the school superintendent, and we have representation from legal counsel also. So we should be able to answer any and all questions that you might have. So it's not really all this formal, but I'm going to start out by just reading the warrant article, okay? And then there's pages of information here for you to digest. Dr. Hayes is going to hit the highlights of those attached pages, right? So everybody's got their blue handout. So because this is a bond warrant, it's going to be warrant article number 1 on the posted warrant. So it reads as follows: to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $45,125,263 for the construction of a new junior-senior high school and authorize the issuance of not more than $45,125,263 of bond or notes in accordance with the provisions of the Municipal Finance Act, RSA Chapter 33, and authorize the school board to issue and negotiate such bonds or notes and determine the rate of interest thereon, and to authorize the school board to apply for and accept and expend any federal, state, or any other aid that may be made available for said project, and to comply with all the requirements related thereto. And further, to raise and appropriate the additional sum of $1,303,619 estimated to be the first bond payment, and authorize the school board to take any and all actions necessary to carry out any vote hereunder or take other action related hereto. The school board has already made a recommendation that they're in favor of this warrant article. The budget committee will be listening tonight, and they're going to have a meeting, I believe it's tomorrow night, to determine their opinion on the warrant article, so that it'll be posted on the warrant on whether they're in favor or not. The warrant article itself, when we go to vote on it, is going to require a 3/5 or 60% majority vote to pass. The estimated tax impact of the warrant article is $1.75. That's $1.75 for the budget year 2015, and Dr. Hayes will explain in more detail how the rest of the monies are to be allocated. So, does anybody have any questions with the formality of tonight before we get started into the technical issues? All right, so Dr. Hayes, you've got the floor.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. The passage of this article, obviously there's a lot of legalese there, but it basically does three things. First of all, it authorizes raising and appropriating the full cost of the school project, the $45.1 million. And secondly, it authorizes that we raise that by going out and seeking a bond for that full amount. And then thirdly, and this is where it raises and appropriates funds out of FY15, it raises the $1.3 million figure that you see there, that would be then an increase of $1.75 per thousand of assessed valuation. Now, as you'll see later on, this bond is a level debt bond, which basically means paying the same amount every year, and it's with the exception of this first year. This first year, because it's a partial calendar year, it is a partial payment. And so the annual impact of this bond is not $1.75 per thousand, and you'll see that later on. Most bonds in New Hampshire for the schools are issued through New Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank, and that means they're sold as part of a package, and that bond sale is usually sometime in the summer. And that's why in this warrant article you really don't see anything about interest rate or a number of years for repayment, because we're some months away from when the bonds are actually sold. And it's at that time that the board, along with bond counsel, can make the decision as to what is in the best interests of the voters. So you don't have anything of that sort now. But we did frame that $1.3 million based on a certain scenario, and I will tell you later what that looks like. I want to talk a moment just about the new school design. So I'm again on the blue handout, but down in the panel at the bottom. The number of instructional spaces that we have designed in this school meet the program design that we have for the school, and meet it for our projected enrollment, and meet it in order to comply with all state requirements for size of spaces, minimum size of spaces. And we have to be in compliance with that regardless of whether we receive state aid at all or not, and obviously this year and probably for years to come there won't be state aid. You see a table there that shows that the previous design was approximately 173,000 square feet, but the new design that we came up with in the last several months is 151,500 square feet. So we really worked hard, listened to the community to try and really shrink this project down to nothing more than we absolutely need in order to provide a quality education now and in the future. And so we've done that. We shrunk the design by 22,000 square feet. The table on the right shows you the number of classrooms that we would need and the minimum square footage. The Department of Education requires that classrooms for high school be a minimum of 800 square feet, and for middle school a minimum of 900 square feet. And you see the different numbers for science labs, and those are all minimums as well, and we're in compliance with all of those. If you turn the page, the design has core areas that support they're appropriately sized for the kind of population that we anticipate. We don't have student lockers in the hallways. We have ample bathroom facilities, something that is quite a difficult challenge here, and we have plenty of storage, which is smart, and clearly we do not have that here. The one compromise that had to be made in order to shrink the square footage was to not add a gym onto the new building, which would be built across the street. That students to take physical education would have to cross the street, take physical education in this building. We'd renovate an adjacent area, cafeteria, to be weight room and cardio room and some support spaces. And so there would have to be that exchange during the day of students moving back and forth. But it's only for physical education and nothing more. Once you eliminate from a building a large group instructional area, it's imperative that you somehow find a way to do that within the building. You can't, every time you need a large group instructional area, you can't be moving students back and forth across the street. It's just unmanageable. And so we have designed an assembly hall in the body of the building, would seat 250 students, which is much less than the auditorium that was proposed on the previous design. So the plan is to retain this gym, the locker rooms which are there, renovate the cafeteria kitchen, and then when that's done and we're occupying the building across the street, to demolish the remainder of the building and turn that into parking spaces, because there's not ample room for parking across the street on the Carpenter property. We have to have a certain number of spaces to accommodate students and other events, and they'd have to be located on this site. How students would get back and across, there would be a crosswalk. We've talked with Department of Transportation, and they've made it clear that that's all that is really necessary. We believe that in the beginning we'd start with a crossing guard during the arrival, of really peak times, the arrival and dismissal times, but going back and forth to classes during the day, we're going to start out with students doing that on their own. Energy efficiency, there are designs that are going to be incorporated into this building that will make that a priority for this project. It's really important that we do that, make it the most efficient building that we can. Lastly, on the new site, we will preserve space there for a new gymnasium. If at some future date the community decides it wants to add a gymnasium across the street, then there will be space to do that. The need for a new facility, I'm not going to walk through that very much. The two bold statements say it all. There are four categories that define the issues. They are the condition of the facility, the fire and life safety issues, the inadequate facilities to support learning, the size is way too small, and the enrollment growth that is coming our way, that we know is coming our way. We have a current enrollment of about 442 students in grades 6 through 12, and we anticipate in not too many years we will be up to 540 students. On the third page, another cost that you need to be mindful of, but it's not included in this Warren article, are operating costs. The operating costs, in my terms, are minimal. We currently spend for this building about $128,000 a year on fuel oil. We will be heating the new building, and you saw the difference in square footage. We will be heating the new building with propane. And even with that increased square footage with propane, we'll be paying less money to heat that larger building than what we pay for this building. The projected increase for electricity and the two custodians that we believe we need for the extra square footage amounts to less than $100,000. So that really is the increase in operating costs from my perspective. There was a proposal that we presented some time ago to the town council about compressed natural gas, a whole different heating source, and if that were ever to see the light of day, then that would make even more significant reductions in our operating costs. I've had a conversation not too long ago with the Associate Director of the Recreation Department, and we talked about their interest to expand adult education, and we took a look at the facility and how that could facilitate adult education plus other community events that they already operate. So the building is really designed to be a community resource and not just a school. The construction timeline is really important. If it's approved in March, it would take 10 months to complete the technical bid documents and go out to bid. And then following that, we estimate approximately 18 months of construction, so that it's fair to say that construction could be completed by June of 2016, certainly by August of 2016, and that's when we would intend to occupy the new building. The next panel there is really important when you get down to how you pay for this bond. We have a number of funds that are already set aside that can be used to pay part of the bond payments, already set aside. So let me go through them. We have this dual purpose fund, which currently has just a little over $600,000. Dual purpose. The two purposes that, when it was set, the community approved were to either build a new school or do fire and life safety renovations. And that's what those funds have been used for in the past and would be used for in the future if the school proposal is defeated. We have another fund called Expanding School Facilities. Obviously, from the title, it's pretty clear that can be used. That has $71,000. Impact fees are fees paid for new construction of residences that then go into a pool of money to pay to go to the schools to add space as a reaction to an impact of increased enrollments. And we know we're getting increased enrollments, so we can use those funds. So that current total is $770,000. On the school warrant that you will see at the deliberative and then again in March, there is a warrant article, it's Article 3, which seeks to raise and appropriate $500,000 to be put into the dual purpose fund. So that would give us a total of just over $1.1 million to do the fire and life safety. A couple months ago, we did an analysis to see what are the remaining projects, when can we complete them, fire and life safety, and how much will they cost? I think you all know that we have a deadline of September 2015 to either fix all of the fire and life safety issues, or the fire marshals and the local fire chief have threatened to close the building on us. So we have to complete it by September of 2015. It was our judgment, the judgment of engineers and architects, that the work can be done over the 2 remaining summers between now and that date. So we have work to do next summer, work to do the summer of 2015. And this summer's work will cost $1.1 million. The total estimate of the 2 summers right now is $1.85 million, just so you know. So that $500,000 gives us the 1.1 that if the bond article is defeated, then that gives us the money to get going on the fire and life safety. If the bond article passes, then we don't have to do any more fire and life safety. And we now would then have that $1.1 million to be used to pay part of our annual bond payments, and you'll see more about that in a few moments. So the possible total that we would have to reduce some of the impact of the payments in the beginning years is $1.27 million. There are 2 basic ways for us to borrow money: level debt and level principal. Level principal means that every year you pay the same principal. The problem with that is that in the beginning you pay a lot more interest, and then the interest declines over time. And so many districts steer away from level principal because the initial payments are just far too expensive. And that was the case when we looked at scenarios that Municipal Bond Bank gave us. So as a board, we've settled in on a level debt borrowing. Level debt means that annually you pay approximately the same amount of money for the life of the bond, whether it's 20 or 25 or 30 years, however long it is. You see there 3 scenarios that were given to us by the Municipal Bond Bank, and I want to go through them a little bit in detail. The first one is a 20-year. The Municipal Bond Bank said that if it's a 20-year borrowing of that full amount, 45.125263, then the interest rate we could estimate, and again it's an estimate, of 4.5%. The first payment, the 2014-15 year, again, is a partial year, so it's a partial payment. And it would only go up, your tax impact in year one, next year, would be $1.58. In the second year is when it goes up to that level amount. So it jumps up in 2 years, in the full year, to $4.62 per thousand of assessed valuation. And you can see as you go from year to year, this is showing the net change. It's basically zero. It's going to be $4.62 a year every year. Once in a while, it'll drop by a penny, sometimes go up by a penny, but it keeps it pretty level in terms of the impact of this school on your taxes. The 25-year bond, the percent would be interest that's estimated is 5%. And so, again, the partial in the first year has a tax impact of $1.75, but then it jumps up to $4.27. If you add 175 and 252, you get $4.27. And that's basically what it stays through the life of the bond. You can see that at some point it goes down by a penny. Every so many years it usually goes down. But in essence, you're paying about the same amount every year. The data on the 30-year, I want to tell you, is incorrect. And let me show you what that is. The percentage rate is correct. It would be approximately a 5.5% interest bond. The first year it was correct at $1.93. But the second year, as you see here, in the numbers I've shown you, it goes up in the second year and then goes down in the third year. It made no sense. And so we challenged Municipal Bond Bank to interpret that to us, and we didn't hear back from them until actually this afternoon. And they made an error. So I will give you the correction. It's $1.93 in that first year, and then in the next year it goes up by $2.22, which takes you to $4.15. In that third year it goes down by a penny, so that it's $4.14. Not the $4.13. And again, that amount carries all the way through. If you flip the page, please. What I've tried to do here is give an example, and it's only an example because some of these are decisions that the board will make at some future time. But the example would be the first 6 years of a 25-year level debt bond, using that $1.27 million that I spoke about and using it in a certain way. And so as you see here, in year one, the impact is $1.75. These offset dollars, that $1.27 million, in my scenario, I don't want to use any of that money, and so the full tax impact is $1.75. In the next year, when you're paying the full cost a full year, it's $4.27. If the school board were to pay $700,000 out of that dual purpose fund, then that would reduce the tax impact by 95 cents, if you can see that next column. So that the tax impact in that year for you would be $3.32. Can you see that? Yes.
Variations of paying down the 300 one year, 700,000. Why wouldn't you just reduce the amount you're borrowing, which would give you less money that you're borrowing for the entire year of the bond? Mr. Chase mentioned that these numbers would be determined by different school boards than are there at present. So why wouldn't you just say, let's reduce what we're asking for by $1.2 million or $1.3 million? Because wouldn't that save money over the life of the bond?
I can let other people answer that, but from my perspective, it's recommended that we bond for the full amount. That is the general approach that districts take, and then use this money to pay it down in the beginning years so that it reduces that impact in the beginning years and eases people into that amount. I think if you were to see, if you paid it all off, you would really not reduce the tax impact a whole lot. Okay.
All right, so there was a question asked there on this area, the example that Dr. Hayes was going over. Did everybody hear the question? Everybody was really good. You could hear a pin drop in here. So I just want to make sure everybody heard the question. And please, if you have other questions, I'd like to ask that you come up to the microphone for two reasons. One, it's a great microphone and you can be heard. But two, it's also captured on the video for archive, okay? So please come up to the microphone if you have further questions to ask. We don't mind answering the questions. So I'll get back. So Dr. Hayes was going over this section where they're trying to distribute funds that are already available to the school board that are in existing funds and or could be increased via another warrant article if so passed in this next session, to distribute those funds in a way to reduce some of the tax impact in a few years of the bond. So back to Dr. Hayes.
Thank you. So to finish that off, in that table at the top, if you use $700,000, you can see that the tax impact then shifts from $4.27 down to $3.32. In year 3, it drops down and then becomes $3.86, and then in year 4, drops it down to $4.10. So it gradually eases homeowners into that paying the full freight, if you will. By using that amount, I didn't use all of the $1.27 million. It leaves about $145,000 remaining in the dual-purpose fund. I think to me, it made sense to leave some money there. So the remaining charts at the bottom are my best attempt to convey to homeowners what would be the tax impact in this scenario for those first 6 years. If you know what your property is assessed at, you can pick the table that is closest to you, whether it's 200 or 250,000 or 300, whatever it is, and at least get some sense of how much you would be paying in those first years for taxes as a result of passing Article 1. And that is all that I have.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Hayes. So it's 7:30. The rest of the handout that you have in front of you is, and we're not going to go over it at this meeting, you have another warrant article, number 2, which is the operating budget that will be heard at the deliberative session and voted on in March. Just for background information.
Let me comment. Let me comment. Can I comment?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I provided all of this to you because there's a great deal of information here that has been handed out at different times at different meetings. And I felt for some of you, this might be the first time you've had a chance to get a copy of these, and I wanted everybody to walk out the door to be as informed as possible on all of the warrant articles and all of the issues involved.
So at the time of the last question, we were talking about some of the funds to be distributed. You also have a copy of warrant article number 3, which is asking for an additional $500,000 to be added to that dual-purpose fund that, if not used, if not necessary to bring up the life safety codes in this building, could be then redistributed to the new school. So that's just information for you to use. So at this time, we'd like to get any and all of your questions answered, if you have questions. So like I said, please come up to the microphone up here if you have a question, and we'll try to get it addressed. When you do come up, state your name and your address for the record.
Hi, good evening. I'm Ken Jeremiah, 235 Cushing Road, right here in Newmarket. I have 2 issues I'd like to address this evening. And the first is related to the public hearing a week ago. At that time, an older gentleman, a longtime member of our community, made a very responsible request. He wanted to see the long-term financial impact of the new school bond stated in the warrant article. Unfortunately, he was laughed at and jeered by several of those in attendance, including members of the school board sitting here tonight. This was offensive. It was disrespectful and unworthy of any adult resident of Newmarket, let alone elected members of the school board. Because this was a public response, it would seem appropriate for someone from the school board to make a public apology, and tonight would be a good time to do that. My second issue. The residents' concern about not stating the long-term impact of the proposed new school in the warrant article is a valid one. You've done a very good job at explaining it in your literature. I understand that. The wording of the warrant, however, makes it too easy for a voter to think that $1.75 per $1,000 of assessed value is what the burden will be for the next 25 years. I understand the long-term implications are not required to be included in the warrant. However, it would seem to be the ethical, responsible, and reasonable thing to do. The school board has published information on the long-term implications. You've reviewed it tonight, you've handed it out tonight, and you're to be commended for that. However, a great many of those entering the voting booth on March 11, people who are not here this evening, will not have had the opportunity to see these publications. And I'm urging the school board to amend its warrant to disclose the anticipated long-term impact so those in the voting booth will have a heads up on what their vote may mean. I suggest one such statement that could be added at the end. It's a simple one. The long-term tax impact of financing the construction of a new junior-senior high school may range up to more than $4 over the 24 years following the enactment of this warrant article. And then concluding, the estimated tax impact of this warrant article is $1.75 in the first year only. I do understand that firm figures are unknown. You've stated that. However, just as general projections have been made in the school published documents, it would seem fair to state them briefly in the warrant. Again, it would be the responsible thing to do, and it would help to set an example for our children that responsible adults have an obligation to fully disclose the whole truth. Thank you.
All right, thanks. So that was a recommendation to amend the warrant article. We can't do that tonight, but
It was
you
also a
feel free to bring that up again during the deliberative session.
Right. It was also a solicitation for a public apology.
Right. So we can amend the warrant article at the deliberative session. School board can change the warrant article also, so they might take your recommendation at that point. So please come on up to the microphone.
My name is Francis Salander. I live at 24 Brilliant Circle in Newmarket. I'd like to make a short statement regarding the bonding for the high school. According to the New Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank in Concord, there are two methods of calculating the interest on the bond. The level principal method is the least expensive. $45 million bonding for 20 years at 4.5% shows a total tax burden of $66,436,875. $45 million for 25 years at 5% shows a total tax burden of $74,269,575. $45 million for 30 years at 5.5% shows a total tax burden of $83,548,125. The level debt method is more expensive. $45 million for 20 years at 4.5% shows a total tax burden of $69,339,825. $45 million for 25 years at 5% shows a total tax burden of $79,986,500. Now listen to this. $45 million for 30 years at 5.5% shows a total tax burden of $92,884,925. These are huge amounts of money, no matter which method is used. Added to those projects on the town side, the downtown water main, which is a safety issue, the McIntosh wells, the upgrade of the wastewater treatment plant, which is imposed on us by the federal government, and McCallum Dam, another job that must be done. Also, if you look at the latest annual report, the 2000 ending in June 2012, and look at the tax collector's report, you'll see that the town of Newmarket, year ending June 30th, 2012, reveals an uncollected property taxes of $2,405,596.53. It is my contention that given the demographics, the taxpayers cannot pay it, and I cannot, in conscience, support it. And I have one question for the school board. When do you intend to propose the $17 million upgrade to the elementary school? Thank you.
I think it's fair to say that we do have considerable issues with our elementary school, and those were first on the burner for us for quite some time until the fire and life safety issues came to the forefront. Yes, we do still have considerable issues with the elementary school that would need to be addressed in the future. I don't think we've discussed it at the board level as to when we would go forward with those things that need to happen. I don't know, does anyone else have anything else to say?
I'd like to comment about that. The plan would be to use portables for the foreseeable future. That's the reality of it. The design to expand that school, which was put together by the Facilities Committee, I believe, back in 2011, created additions to the school at 4 different points. And unlike what we're doing now, we're building a whole new school, but in that scenario, it is conceivable to add a portion on in 4 phases. So you may not have to do, like you said, the 17 million all at once. You may do one piece of that and let that then help expand the school, take advantage of that, and then a few years later do another and so forth. So it does not have to be done all at once, but there's nothing on the books that says in 5 years we'd be proposing that, for example. Okay?
So there's just one more clarification I want. So I believe you were also, with all those numbers that you threw out, thank you for your homework, kind of got me turned around, but I think the point you were trying to bring out, correct me if I'm wrong, you were looking at the total finance debt, right? So it's not just the taxpayers, what we're paying. You're saying maybe the school board should appreciate and take a look into what is the total payment over the full term and try to keep that cost as low as possible so that the overall payment that the public is making is less. Is that correct?
That's the total.
Yep.
Those numbers come from the New Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank.
Yeah, so, and those numbers are all going to change between now and when they do go for bonding, and the warrant article and the information is trying to say to the public that this is our best estimates right now, and when we go to get the bond, dollars are going to change, cents are going to change, it's not going to be exactly the same thing. And the school board at that time, and some of the wording here, they're going to try to select the best method that they believe is for the public, and I think they hear you tonight in that it's not just the tax dollar impact year to year, it's the total, could be the total cost of the entire project, okay? So, yeah, Dr. Hayes?
Just one comment about that. We just looked up the estimate we've gotten from the Municipal Bond Bank for borrowing $45 million, not the 45.1, and beginning in year 2, when you pass that first year partial payment, the tax impact is more than $1 per thousand a year. And it takes 11 years of declining impact before you get to the 4.27 level of a level debt. And so it's that 11-year span of really paying a lot more. Your points are well taken, but that is very problematic. That's all.
Well, one point that I was trying to make is I don't think that the tax base in town, with the demographics of the population, can support it.
I heard you.
Okay. I think Mr. Dieterle is up.
Paul Dieterle, Smith Garrison Road. Question to the attorney, because this is going to get us a deliberative session, and I don't know if the attorney is going to be there. Number of potential amendments have been suggested tonight. What types of amendments are legal? Is this one of those that cannot be rewritten in any shape or form? Can we add the advisory language with regards to tax rate? Are we limited to simply the amount on it? Can we put stipulations in like the money to be spent in coming years? There will be interest accrued while money that sits in the bank. Can we have a stipulation in there that requires that money to be turned to the tax base, et cetera, et cetera?
In general, for any amendment to a warrant article, there are two things you have to keep in mind. First is that you can't change the subject matter. So when you talk, so that's the first problem. The second problem, particularly with a bond article, is not to make it so complicated and so complex that people don't understand it, which is why normally when there's a bond article on the warrant, we recommend that a lot be done ahead of time so that the voters understand before they go in to vote just what it is they're voting on. That way we can keep the bond article at least to a manageable length. I do not believe that as part of the bond article you can insert language requiring the school board in future years to apply to pay back on the payment schedule or to include in the annual payment so much money every year from this fund or so much money from that fund. I think that is also the sort of thing that's best left to the discretion of the school board. Same thing if you're talking about the length of the bond issue, the length of the payback. That's going to depend on what the municipal bond bank is doing. When you have the bond sale, it's going to depend on what is the best deal for the school district. It's likely to be on the payment schedule they're talking about, but there's no guarantee that could be changed. And I don't know if David Barnes, who is bond counsel, has any comments about the idea of putting the tax impact for future years. My thought is that the statute authorizes the tax impact for that year. I think if you want to tell the voters what the tax impact will be for future years, that the better way to do it is to provide voter information in the form of tables and whatever you want to do, such as what's been provided tonight, to the voters before they actually go to the polls to vote, particularly where you're a Senate Bill 2 community. I don't know, David, do you
I would
have
agree.
any- Okay.
So, to put in very simple terms, probably not going to allow any amendments to this article at the deliberative session unless somebody were to suggest that we would chop it to $20 million, which I sure won't pass at deliberative. Pretty much on target with that.
Yeah, I think my recommendation would be to leave the article as it is, not to try to add amendments to it that are going to restrict the school board's authority to work out the best financial arrangement for the district at the time the bonds are sold. We're also very, this gentleman here, David Barnes, is bond counsel. He is the person that has to give the final opinion on the bond issue that it will in fact be a tax-exempt security, that you've complied with all the procedural requirements, et cetera, et cetera. And I always run bond articles by him and hope that the voters will not make very many changes to them, if at all.
Okay. I think we know how that'll spin out. The remainder of my comments are really going to be directed at the Budget Committee, which is going to make a recommendation one way or the other. Despite all the harsh comments that have come in both sides of this debate in recent years, I, as an individual taxpayer, appreciate the work everybody's put into this. It hasn't been easy, it's never been easy, and regardless of how it turns out, it won't be easy going forward. That said, I would hope that the Budget Committee will not recommend this. In the context of a $45 million school here, X millions of dollars at the elementary school down the road, other expenses which probably will conservatively total another $100 million by the time we get done. If you're looking at a $1,000 tax increase because of this alone, you're looking at another $1,000 to $1,500 tax increase because of everything else, whether it's taxes or fees. I'm sorry, that's just going to bankrupt too many of us. It's going to force too many of us out of town that would like to stay here. My opinion is, and it's only my personal opinion. No. Yeah.
We can't hear him, Chris.
All right, so just,
Not working. Okay, I've been accused of talking too loud in the past. I'll try it again. I'm sorry, it's just too much money. I think we should support the warrant article that allows you to bring the building up to code. I think we should move on to doing what we need to do at the elementary school with the consideration of moving some of the sixth graders back to that school as they were about 10 years ago and unloading the population a little bit on this school. It's not perfect. It's not what we'd all like to do, but it's what our pocketbooks tell us we can do, and I would hope that when the Budget Committee meets, that's what they will do. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mickey Burns. I live at 145 Ash Swamp here in Newmarket. Talk a little louder. I'll do my best. Thanks, folks. I want to appreciate all the comments from folks that have come up here previously talking about the amount of money and the dollars that are necessary to enact this school. I want to go on record in saying that I am in favor of that increase. It's not going to be easy for my family covering those costs, but my question to the committee, is there any reason to believe that these costs will decrease if we do nothing? Is there any reason to believe that doing nothing means we will pay less in the future for these necessary improvements? Do we think that things will change if we do nothing? Because my point is there is a time value cost to doing nothing right now, and the best chance to tackle this issue is to do it with the current dollars and with the current plan. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Adrienne Wolkowiak. I'm at 22 Harvest Way, and I want to tell you all why I am in favor of a new school. I'm the parent of 2 students at Newmarket Elementary School. When my husband and I moved here 10 years ago, I was pregnant with my older daughter. The community was debating the issue to build or not to build back then. Now, 10 years later, we're still debating the same issue. The problem is not going away. It's time for us as a community to acknowledge that we've explored and exhausted other possible options. Now is the time for a long-term solution. We've been amenable to various regionalization and tuitioning options, most recently with Oyster River. Oyster River rejected us and accepted Barrington. We've considered renovating our current building, but this option won't fix all the necessary problems and can't address significant issues such as future growth. Renovation is like putting a tiny Band-Aid on a gaping wound. It's not a viable long-term solution. A new school facility is a smarter, more efficient, and more financially responsible solution to our town's crisis. A new school is a smart investment in the future of our town. It will increase the value of our homes and attract more families to our community. Is everybody awake now? Conversely, it will be difficult to sell our houses at full value with an inadequate school in our town. The community voted to purchase land in a great location with no tax impact, an important first step in building the proposed new facility. Please understand that we're committed to being fiscally responsible. We're not asking for the Ferrari of schools. We're not asking for a gold-domed auditorium or imported marble hallways. We want to build a safe, dependable, comfortable, and healthy school, a Honda of a building that will be modest while still meeting the needs of our current and future students. My husband and I are proud to live in Newmarket, such a vibrant, connected, and friendly small town, and this is where we want to raise our daughters. We want our kids and their classmates to have a high-quality education in a safe, comfortable, and healthy building. It's time to stop debating this issue. It's time to act. As a parent and a taxpayer, I believe strongly and passionately that our town needs a new school, and I'm optimistic that our community will finally come together and commit to this necessary solution. Our children and our community deserve better. Thank you.
Just before you get started, Mr. Parada, let me just apologize for the audio equipment. It's new audio equipment, and we're trying to work the bugs out of it. The school board tells me they took some steps in trying to improve the audio equipment due to difficulties that we've had at past deliberative sessions and such. They did do a dry run earlier in the week. They told me it was working fine. It worked fine at the beginning, and it sounds like we're back in business now, too. So just bear with us. All right, Mr. Parada.
It's working, right?
It does work, yes.
It works. Ed Porterada, 177 Exeter Road, Newmarket. Lived here for 64 years. Married 65. The reason I left that meeting quick, because I have a pacemaker and it was acting up. And that's why I left quick. Not that I was something going to happen, but I just made sure I had to calm down because I do get riled up. You're talking about, I know we lost out on this Oyster River thing, but the question I got to ask is, you had a deadline of December 18th to put in the request, and you didn't, according to the Oyster River School Board. Is that right?
What I would say is don't believe everything you read in the newspapers. That's not correct. I did provide it with them. I've got documentation that shows the exchange that we had in emails and me confirming what Newmarket's final agreement was. So they did. Whatever he said, I don't know what the reporter reported. I can't answer for that either. But they did have a firm answer from Newmarket.
Okay. I'm not going to talk about this loan at all. What I'm talking about, if it doesn't pass, I think you should try to get into another school. Like, I think Portsmouth, try again, Epping again. They turn you down, but try that if something happens.
I'm going to have to stop you right there. I want to try to stay focused on the current bond issue.
Okay,
so that we can get questions answered, please.
Oops, okay, here we go. Now, the loan is $45,100,000. Now, this one here is $1,303,000. Is that going to be deducted from the $45 million loan?
That first payment actually is all interest. And subsequent payments are interest and principal. So that the principal does start declining once you get into the next year.
So this 1.3 million should be added to the 45.1 million?
No, it's the interest you get from borrowing the 45 million.
I know, but it's still part of the, you're going to borrow 45 million, but you're still going to pay 1,300,000 first, right?
Yes.
But you're still going to borrow 45 million you're going to borrow.
Yes.
So in other words, it comes up to 46, the whole shebang.
In the end, I mean, you're paying interest every year.
Yeah.
You know that. Yeah.
And then it comes to this $613,000. You're going to take that money, if you get the school, you're going to take that money and put in part of the loan, right?
The voters approved that.
The $613,000 is already in a reserve fund.
I know.
Right, and it would no longer be necessary because it's pretty much earmarked for the life safety improvements. The other half of that reserve fund is for the new school. It's the dual purpose fund. So rather than spending it on this building, it wouldn't be necessary. Those funds could be then reallocated to paying down the bond issue as shown in the other example.
Of course, there was a $500,000 that's going to be part of the issue, because you're going to have to add on many other hundreds of thousands of dollars to maybe put desks in there, all kind of equipment.
Furniture are all built into the...
In that $45.1 million, there is an amount of money for furnishings of different sorts, be it tables and lockers and things of that.
Well, I understand the loan, how much you're going to pay, what the taxes are going to be. I understand that the town is going to be assessed this year. So if somebody's got a $200,000 home, he might have a $250,000 home and be taxed on that. And it's something to think about anyways. Single homes always seem to get hit with a reassessment. I'm just saying that you made a $200,000 home, a $100,000 home. This might change the value of that person's house. Then what happens? Thank you.
If I can, you raise a good point that I didn't mention when I went through all of this. All of those rates, if it's a 25-year loan, taking it out all 25 years, uses the current town total assessed valuation, which we all know is not realistic, but that's what Municipal Bond Bank does, because there's no better number to put there. But we know that the assessed valuation of the town can vary from year to year, and that then changes the tax impact somewhat.
Well, I know, that's what I'm saying.
I know.
Hi, I'm Tony Weinstein, 275 Ash Swamp Road. I'm excited to be here tonight, talking about the possibility of a new school in Newmarket. And I thank the school board, the facilities committee, and Dr. Hayes for the years of work to get us to this point. I'm excited about the opportunities a new school will open up for our town. Many have said it in the past. Newmarket is a town that seems to have almost everything. A vibrant community with a quaint downtown full of interesting restaurants and shops. It really is a gem. Now we have an opportunity to end a decade or more of debate and solve our school facility situation. And at a time when rates are low and interest rates and construction costs will only continue to climb. And while I know this will not be an easy decision for many, I want to explain some of the reasons I support this building project. Home values will increase, and more young families will move to Newmarket. We're currently talking about adding 52 new homes on the golf course, and it would be beneficial for everyone if home values are positive when that project goes through. I've heard people say that they don't care if their property values increase. They never plan to sell their homes. Maybe not, but putting a child through college, or putting on a new roof, or caring for an elderly parent are all reasons you may want to have added equity in your home. More new homes at a higher value will translate to more revenue for the town. This will assist in growing our tax base and also bring in revenue through new vehicle registrations and building permits. And not just new construction, but people who have been waiting for this issue to be resolved before renovating or making long overdue improvements in their own homes will be pulling permits too. And finally, it's good for business. More families means more traffic in local restaurants. It means more people frequenting local shops. It will add to our community as we celebrate Old Home Day, the tree lighting, our Memorial Day parade, the Heritage Festival, and the Halloween Haunt, to name a few. We need to look forward to the future of Newmarket, and we have an opportunity to approve a solution that will not just benefit our community today, but for generations to come. Thank you for your time.
Hello, I am Judy Boutot, and I live in Cushing Road in Newmarket. I've been a taxpayer in Newmarket for 13 years. But my primary and the thing I'm most proud of is being a mother and a grandmother. I'm lucky enough to have my grandson living in Newmarket today, as my daughter and her family are also taxpayers and are hoping to upsize and continue to be taxpayers. So I'm highly insulted when it becomes people for the children and the people against the children. That is absolutely not what I feel and not what the people I talk to feel. We are all for what's best for Newmarket. And just because our solution for the children is different, that absolutely does not mean we are against the children. I really wish we were a wealthy and large town, and then we could all agree on a solution. Unfortunately, that's not true. Newmarket is not a wealthy town. Per capita income is $33,000 a year. The two-family income is between $50,000 and $60,000 a year. And what we are trying to do is exactly what all the homeowners tried to do in the late 1990s and 2000s when they begged, borrowed, and stole to buy a house they couldn't afford. What's exactly going to happen to us, and this is upsetting to me because I wish we could do it, was if you look at the tax rate and what it's going to go up, and you add it to where we already are, we are going to be the highest tax town in the Seacoast. And anybody who thinks, and I'm sorry, but anybody who thinks build it and they can come is not true. Because why do people come to a town? Two reasons. First, for an excellent school. And believe me, I have strong feelings that Newmarket is a good school. I absolutely do. I think we have good teachers. I think people try very hard with what we have to make it a good school. However, rightly or wrongly, and I think it's wrongly, Newmarket does not have a reputation as the best school district in the Seacoast. Pure and simple. We build a school, that is not going to change. It's just not. But let's say by some miracle it does, and all of a sudden we're in the top 10 schools in New Hampshire, which we have 2 in the Seacoast that are. So let's say all of a sudden we're in that list. Are people going to come here? Once again, no. Because our tax rate is going to be such that people aren't going to be able to afford it. So what's going to happen is people are going to, and as somebody said at the last meeting, if you can't afford it, leave. And that's exactly what's going to happen. People aren't going to be able to afford to pay $8, $9, $10, $20, $30,000 a year in taxes. They're going to leave. Some people can afford it, but they're going to say, you know, if I have an extra $1,000, $2,000 a month in taxes, I'd rather spend it for my children's or grandchildren's college education. And that's just absolutely the truth. So we are going to end up with a school that we can't afford yearly operational budgets for. People were very eloquent at the budget meeting, and I appreciated it, saying, please do not, cut the budget. And I don't know why people think we want them to cut the budget. I want kids to have computers. I want them to have good teachers. I certainly want the special ed. We're not going to afford to be able to go up in operating schools. You are going to have children sitting in a gorgeous school without the computers they need. That's the absolute truth, and I'm sorry about that. So let's say all of a sudden someone says, I'll give you $57 million, or 45, whatever it is, to build a school. Is it still the best solution for Newmarket? I would suggest it's not. We're also a very small town, 8,000 people total, 1,700 kids in school age, 1,000 that attend the schools. I don't think anybody who reads much in education, and I was an educator in a past life, would say the best education for kids is school sizes between, and graduating classes between 43 and 70. Once again, feel free to come up and say your kids love that. And an average kid might do very fine in a 43, absolutely. I went to a school with 43 kids in the graduating class, and I did okay, make no mistake. But that's not the best. You can't, if you're a little out of the ordinary, you can't find a peer group. Can't get the extracurricular you want. Say you want 4 years of physics. Maybe we give that, but we can't give everything. It's too small. That's the absolute truth. I've talked to a lot of Newmarket students after they graduate. My husband's a big chit-chatter, and I sort of jump in a little bit because I want to hear what they think about the school because I love Newmarket. And almost universally, they say, we had great teachers, great principal, loved it. However, I wish it had been a little larger. In this day and age of diversity and inclusion, we can no longer afford small rural schools. We just can't. It's not the best solution for the kids. Somebody also said at the budget meeting that she wished it could be a win-win. I do too. I absolutely wish we all wanted the same thing and it would work. Come election day, if the school is voted in, will I consider myself a loser? Absolutely not. I can make my own decisions, what I want to do. I think the losers will be the children of Newmarket who end up in a school we can't afford. And the town of Newmarket, which, I honestly don't think we're looking at what this is going to do. What happened when the housing bubble burst? The worst recession since the Depression. And we had the financial government behind us. What do you really think is going to happen in Newmarket when this bursts? I don't think we're going to need the funding for the 2017 300-year thing. I cannot support the Warren article as much as I wish I could. Thank you.
Tom Switek, 8 Lamprey Street. I had a question for Dr. Hayes at the end of this. Maybe you can clear me up. One of the problems I was having listening to the generalization of the demographics of this town won't support, and I've heard that phrase used over the last couple months, so I looked up what the demographics of Newmarket are in the last census. The population was 8,936, and that's actually a decrease from where it was in the late, between 90 and 2000, but this 2010 census, so a town of little under 9,000 is where we are. The median age of this town, meaning half the people are older, half the people are younger, the median age of Newmarket is 35. People 65 and older number 871 persons. That's 9% of Newmarket's population. If you add people 62 and above, it's 1,150. That would make 12% of the population. The children, on the other hand, number 2,117 approximately, and that's 24% of Newmarket's population. Now, the wild card for me is the renter population. It is exactly 40% in Newmarket. 3,583 people are renters in Newmarket. With a population in the school, K through 12, hovering around 1,500, give or take, going into the future. My question for Dr. Hayes was, it seems to me that that rental population is unknown in terms of what it brings into the school system yearly in terms of needs and students, and it's a variable. But I looked at what you were saying here, that the special needs budget jumped from 175 to 250 based on X number of children. If a new school is built, does that enable us to handle within the district special needs students better than it does now? Because every special needs student that has to go out of the district costs us more money than I would think than educating within, but I was asking that as a question.
I don't believe the dynamic changes, to be honest with you, because I think as a school system, we are very inclusive, if you will. We bend over backwards to find ways for Newmarket kids to go to Newmarket schools and deal with their disabilities in-house. And it's only when all efforts are exhausted that the students go on out-of-district placements. And it's the out-of-district placements that drove the large increases in special education, some from students from within the district, but mostly from people who moved in and came in with significant needs. I don't believe it would change that at all with a larger building. I think the situations when a student is placed out of district, they have clearly demonstrated that they're not going to succeed in a public school environment. They need something far more structured than what we can provide.
The last demographic that I found interesting in this town is, of the population 25 years and older, which numbers around 5,500 people of the 9,000, 70% of those 25 and older have some form of higher education. Either they went to college for a year or two and did not graduate, or they're still in, or they got some sort of professional degree or associate's degree. But what it tells me is that the education issue in this town isn't just for children. I'm talking about a town that is educated. And to me, education means learning to expand your views so that you don't live in fear. And that's what I want our children to learn, that you don't live in fear of the future. You don't portray the future as fearful. So 70% of this town has already been involved in higher education. I'd like to see Newmarket expand that. I'd like to see Newmarket tell its children, who number 25%, we want you to go beyond that. We want you to have an education that lets you see and question and not be afraid. So I support the resolution wholeheartedly.
Hi. I'm nervous. I've never done this before, but I feel very strongly, so
All right, just start out with
here
your name.
I go.
Start out with your name and address.
My name is Allie Ambrosio. I live on Ashwamp Road. I've lived in Newmarket since second grade, graduated in 1994. I remember when I was a student here 20-plus years ago, seeing teachers teach in hallways because something was wrong with the classroom. The cafeteria was also often used as a classroom. I remember teachers wheeling around carts from classroom to classroom to teach because they didn't have their own. I also remember having to wear jackets in some classrooms, but yet sweating in the next. I love this town. It is home. But it is time Newmarket has a junior-senior high school we can be proud of. It is time great families want to move to Newmarket, not move out. It's time we stop putting Band-Aids on this problem that's been around for decades. This problem is not going away. The building is literally falling down around our children and great teachers. My stepdad, John Otash, being one of those great teachers. It's time we make the right decision and vote yes to build a new school and fix this problem once and for all. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nicole Benson. I live on 12 Mockingbird Lane. Good evening. I want to thank you, the Budget Committee, for their work presenting from last week, the school board, and everyone that is here and has taken the time to come out and be a part of this process. This is a very important process, and I thank you for that. I want to start by saying that I do not have an undergraduate degree in education. I do not have a master's degree in education, and that goes without saying, I do not have a PhD in education. I also am not a certified teacher, and I don't have a teaching degree. So I can't speak to what the teachers are dealing with in the school and how they're teaching, and I can't speak to how the children are learning in the current facility. But I am a taxpayer, and I'm a parent. In fact, my oldest is in the class of 2020, and we all know what they say about hindsight. It's... Wasn't that funny? I thought it was brilliant. But anyway.
I didn't hear. What was that?
I thought it was brilliant. My son is in the class of 2020, and as you all know, hindsight is 2020. Thank you. Many people are advocating for a renovation of the current site, feeling that the renovation would be considered less expensive while still meeting the Department of Education minimum standards for our current programming and projected enrollment. I disagree. In the November 28th, 2012 meeting minutes of the Facilities Committee, located online, an addition renovation was rejected by the Facilities Committee for the following reasons. Number one, the design lacked an emergency access road completely around the building, of which the fire chief had a concern. Number two, limited potential for expansion in the future. Number three, it would be a 3-year program with students going to school on a construction site. Number four, potential to be more due to unknown factors. And number five, the price difference between a new building, currently at $45.1 million, and an addition renovation, which was estimated at $44.3 million, is $800,000. I want us to look at our neighbor town for some perspective and possible 2020 vision before it becomes hindsight. Portsmouth Middle School, which houses 3 grades, 6th, 7th, and 8th, versus Newmarket Jr. High, which houses 7 grades, 6 through 12, and maybe possibly 8 if we introduce the 5th grade up here, was originally proposed to be a new building school on land that Portsmouth School District had already purchased. Sound familiar? For $38 million, that was the proposed new school cost, including fields and etc. Remember, that was for only 3 grades. Portsmouth's town did not want to build a new school and preferred to renovate and do an addition. As of the Seacoast article online for October 17th, 2013, the project is now expected to be $40.8 million, a $3.3 million increase, and has gone past the deadline. Not only is it longer and more expensive, not all the problems are solved. For example, after a section was renovated, a pipe burst that after it was being fixed, it revealed further structural damage to the building, which then has this project which means that this project, already done, has more work to be done because it's structurally not sound. after it's been renovated. My question is this: shifting from renovation toward the new construction and reading page 9 in the FAQ that you all picked up coming in, I noticed that the cost of the site work, demolition, and related fees and construction of the current design is $37.8 million. Could you please explain the $7.3 million difference and what that $7.3 million is for?
Yeah, I have it, yeah. They are grouped generally, for the most part, as soft costs. Let me deal with the first one, contingency. Usually on a construction project, the Department of Education recommends that in new construction, you take 5% of the construction cost and put that in a contingency amount. For renovations, they recommend twice that, and because of the things you could discover. So that is what Harriman does, that's their practice, and so what's built into our costs is a 5% contingency. It is possible that if you anticipate certain site issues, you might have a larger contingency. We've already done studies on that land. We don't anticipate issues, so we haven't done that. The remainder of them are called soft costs, and there's quite a bit there, but I'll just give you the big headings. Architectural and engineering fees, additional services by the architect, design and professional services that the owner wishes to have, materials and installation, and permits and fees. That's what amounts to all of that other stuff. I can give you
And the bidding is included in this too?
plenty. This will go out. This will go out to bid. Yes,
But that's,
for the
that's
construction.
included. That $2.2 million.
Yes, it
included.
is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, you're saying is that that $7.3 million is pretty much going to stay roughly the same, regardless if you decide to cut this down.
I think that's fair. I think it might be more because you've got a more complicated site when you're doing a renovation.
I
than
mean,
just
if
new
you choose to
construction.
take the new building,
Yes.
the new design,
Yes.
and cut it down to $30 million, that 7.3 is, it's not affecting the 7.3, it's affecting the children.
No,
It's
well,
affecting
some
the
of them are
building.
percentage of the construction costs.
Yes, yes.
So,
Given
yes.
that, roughly.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to make a point is saying that if we're cutting this down, we're cutting the building, we're cutting then programs, which we are then cutting directly the children's education. Is this correct?
I'd say that's accurate.
Thank you.
Dan Hill, 52 Lady Slipper Drive here in Newmarket. First of all, thank you. Those of you on the school board and certainly on the budget committee have what I see as what can sometimes be thankless jobs. So thank you for all the work that you do and the effort that you put in. And for those that know me in this town, which there are a few here, I guess, you probably know that I tend to be on the side of fiscal responsibility for the most part. I tend to be on the side of cutting when I can and just living in such a way so I can afford to do the things that need to be done. I'm also reminded of something, a quote that my dad used to tell me when I was growing up and kept doing the same thing over and over again and not achieving what I wanted to achieve. And what's that? The definition of insanity quote, right? Is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And I think that's what we're doing here. I think if you go back to 2006, which is actually the year my family and I moved here, you know, there was a vote right before we moved here for a new school and a new building and purchasing land. And my understanding of that is that the total price tag of the land and the new school was around $36 million, if I'm correct. Well, 8 years later, after voting no on that, we're looking at $45 million. What is it going to look like 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 8 years from now? I can only imagine that the price will go up and eventually our taxes are going to go up. And believe me, no one wants their taxes to go up. The state of New Hampshire funds its education primarily through property taxes. That's the reality. If we were voting in March for a new sales tax, I would probably vote yes on that, so we could find a different way to fund it. But we don't have a different way, and we need to fix the situation before it gets out of hand even more and before it becomes even more of a burden financially. So that's my first real point, and my second, obviously, you're learning here that I'm in support of this new school building. I do believe that it's not just an investment in my children, it's an investment in kids going to this school for the next 20, 30, 40 years. It's an investment in this town. I grew up in a small town in New Hampshire, and I love the way this town feels. It feels like home, even though I haven't lived here all my life. I grew up in central part of the state. And it feels like home, and I want it to remain my home. And I don't want to have to make that tough decision of what am I going to do with my two children, and what are all these people going to do with their kids in the school. And I want to make the right choice for this community, not just for the tax year of 2015, but for the next 20, 30, 40 years. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lisa Henderson. I live at 6 Maple Crest, and I have a question about parking. I think I heard at the outset a mention of a minimum parking space requirement. Maybe I heard that wrong. I'm wondering how the projected number of spaces compare to the current amount, and why I raise that is it is sad to see plans to demolish the existing building, which, you know, has a nice stately historic presence along the street. I recognize that the current school is completely inadequate for use as a school, and I fully support the construction of a new school. However, I would certainly rather see it be reused for another community purpose that could be potentially revenue generating. My background happens to be in affordable housing development. I work for a nonprofit affordable housing developer in the Seacoast, and I can give you handfuls of examples of schools that have been renovated for use as affordable senior housing, allowing for folks on fixed incomes to be able to afford to remain in more manageable housing. And that can also be, you know, it is a business arrangement that can result in revenue to the town. And then just my other observation about parking in general, that, you know, much like we go to the mall and we see this sea of parking that is anticipating the day after Thanksgiving and not really the day-to-day use. And is there any way to pull that back a little bit? But if there are requirements, I would be eager to hear about that.
The Department of Education requires a certain percentage of your student population. I don't remember the percentage, but I believe we have to have 175 parking spaces for students. So that would be on this side of the street. There is room to do some parking across the street, but primarily that's all staff. So I think this flexibility on this site, getting to your point about development, I share your interest where I've been before. I've closed schools and rented out schools and been able to do that. Our problem here with this facility is it's not in any good condition to rent. I have had a couple conversations actually with a local developer, Eric Chinberg, people know his name, and we've talked about the possibility of renovation of, I'll call it the 1924 building, because it's a very attractive building, not for school purposes, but for some other non-school use. And I limit it to that because the other requirement besides parking that we have to have for a high school site, there are requirements around the number of acres you have that is the composite of the site. And so we need some acreage on this side of the street in order to satisfy that requirement. But in fact, Eric Chimberg and I talked, I think it was Friday, and we talked about that something perhaps could be done here, and that he might be interested in doing something with that part of the building, but that is a decision that is really in the future, because we really don't abandon this building until 2016. we're a long ways away from talking about what might be done with what's here. But when the time comes, he and I will have a conversation, the board will be involved in conversations, and maybe there is a way to do that in a way that preserves that then brings tax revenues to the town and provides another useful entity to the town, and then helps defray and results costs of paying for the school. But that's not something we can really plug into the plan right now. We don't have a developer, but certainly it's an avenue we've explored.
And the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority is a great resource to understand the complexities of a particular animal of affordable housing development. And I just would urge to look at it sooner rather than later, because actually in these projects like this, where you're cobbling together different resources to make something happen, the development timeline can be 2 to 3 years. So it'd be great to think about it sooner.
That was his business, and
Yeah.
you know, and he was comfortable with that discussion that we had, because it's not my business,
Right.
but he was a good person to talk to.
He is. Thanks.
All right, so I see a lot of people getting kind of antsy. The meeting's kind of drawing on. We do appreciate all the commentary, and it's fine. We can continue with that. I just want to make sure, though, that with the handouts you have in front of you, everybody understands the numbers that are there. That if you have any questions related specifically to numbers or the handouts, to please bring those forward. But we can go on all night and talk, and that's fine too. But sure, go ahead.
Hello, Elena Lyon, 11 Garnet Drive here in Newmarket, and I have one question, and then I have a set of comments, but I'll try to keep them very brief. So my first question, my only question really concerns student traffic across the street, and I think Dr. Hayes mentioned that there would be a traffic guard in the morning, but after that there wouldn't. I don't know if I heard that correctly, and so maybe you could just explain that one more time quickly.
And we talked, I think, Plan A, if you will, is in the morning, arrival times, peak transportation time, and then a dismissal at the end of the day. So we'd have crossing guards then, but not during the day. If during the day becomes problematic, then I imagine we'd employ a crossing guard at other times during the day. I think if it still becomes problematic, we have had conversations with Department of Transportation about putting in a blinking pedestrian stoplight. So that's something that is workable, although I think each light costs somewhere around $100,000 or so. It's in that vicinity. And so there's some expense we're trying to avoid. We want to try the crosswalk first.
All right, so my comments are just real quick. There's been a lot of discussion about economic costs and the tax cost of this, and I thought I'd just bring up a couple of points. I'm a researcher in higher education, and so I spend a lot of time looking at what's called empirical data. And so I just spent a little bit of time, actually spent a lot of time, looking at research done by economists, sociologists, and realtors. And so this is what I found out, and I'll just be very brief because I know that the time is getting short. First of all, in terms of long-term positive impacts, economically, there are lots, and I'm just going to mention them really quickly. There's something that economists call the multiplier effect, and I don't want to give you a lecture 101 on economics here, but the multiplier effect means that if you spend money in one particular sector, it spills over, it multiplies into lots of other sectors. So just real briefly, if we build the school, multiplier effects are plumbers, electricians, contractors, lots of folks in this community will benefit immediately economically by those revenues. In terms of other multiplier effects, we know, and this is a quote that I'm going to take from one particular piece of research, that with an investment in terms of $1 of capital spending on education increases the willingness on the part of marginal home buyers to pay an additional $1.50. So that's quite a good investment. If you spend $1 in education, you get people willing to spend $1.50 more on property values. We also know, and the research is out there, and if you want any of the information that I have my card with me. I can send you an email with probably more information than you ever wanted, but just a couple of links. So we know that there's lots and lots of documented evidence that increasing school structures and facilities increases property values. In fact, the estimates that I came up with looking at regions is about $30,000 to $50,000 increase on a $300,000 home. That's significant. In addition, we know that increased school facility will bring new people in and new businesses. And as new businesses come in, that creates more tax base, and more people come in, another form of tax base. So we also know that school funding increases revenue for teachers, that salaries for teachers, staff, building construction. People take their money, whether or not it's the plumbers that are working on the facility or the teachers, that they pay mortgages, they pay rent, they go out to dinner, they buy goods and services. There is this trickle-down multiplier effect in many, many sectors when you talk about school spending. One thing that's what's called a less kind of a quantitative measure is that healthy spaces for students is actually an economic benefit. Less sick kids, less time away from school. And then there's one other thing that was very surprising to me, and that is teacher satisfaction. They found that teacher satisfaction is actually higher in the teaching space that they're in rather than their own salaries, and that blew my mind. I'd never heard anything like that. There's lots of research. Again, I'm happy to share what I found. So just to sum up, increased jobs, stronger tax base, better academic performance, better teacher retention, increased property values. These are all extreme positives. I'll just take a couple of seconds and say, if you don't pass a new school, property values will go down. We'll see something called capital flight. People will leave, their ideas, their energy, their commitment to the community, and their tax monies will also leave. Let me also point out that the problems don't go away. People are leaving, affluent people are leaving, smart people are leaving, brain drain, good students, good athletes, good teachers leave. These are all significant costs to a community. So I'm just going to say that the last thing is that there will be this issue. It will continue. An aging school needs persistent repairs, and fixing the old school with the $2 million is not going to change anything. There will be constant need for upgrades and constant expenditures that will be needed for overcrowding issues as well as maintaining the facility. So let me just point out that at least my research indicates that investing in a school is a long-term positive economic gain. This is not altruism. This is economics. Thank you.
Hi, Craig Dion, 2 Kimball Way in Newmarket. I visit high schools for a living. I'm a Northeast Director for admissions at one of the top 100 colleges and universities in the country. This past fall alone, I visited 112 different high schools. I can tell you that I've had a chance to walk around Newmarket Jr. Senior High School, and I've not seen another school like it in recent years. And unfortunately, that's not a good thing. To continue with the car analogy, it reminds me a lot of my first car. It was a 1984 Ford Escort. Pretty powder blue powder blue, looked great from the outside, but not so good on the inside. In fact, it had a funky smell I couldn't get rid of. The heat would work some of the time, not all the time. And it still had an 8-track tape deck in it, even though CDs were out and about. That reminds me of what we have going on in this school right now. Ultimately, I ended up spending far more on this car than it was worth. I had a higher monthly payment after all the repairs I put into it than it would have cost to buy a new car from the beginning. So that's kind of where we're at with this school. As I mentioned, I visit a lot of high schools, and I've had the unique opportunity to visit schools that have built new facilities. I visit schools like Exeter High School before and after. I visited Kennett High School up in North Conway before and after. I visited Bedford High School before they left Merrimack and now that they're on their own. I also, Masconomet High School in Massachusetts, in Boxford, and also Wellesley High School. Very different community from here, but you kind of get the idea. The difference in the students that I met is night and day from the old school and the new school. But the new school gave students a newfound confidence. They didn't need to worry about being safe, being too cold, being too hot, or rooms being too crowded. They could concentrate on academics now that they had the new facility. They had appropriate-sized classrooms, up-to-date science labs, and lots of social and academic elbow room. They felt more comfortable and allowed them to aim higher and challenge themselves. The university I work for saw substantial increases in applications from these schools and also saw considerable increases in classroom performance and standardized test scores. A new school clearly allows students to reach their full potential. I will be voting for a new school in March. A new school will ultimately cost less than any other option, whether it be renovating portable classrooms or sending kids elsewhere. A new school will get our kids out of their 1984 Ford Escort into a more reliable reliable building that is not outdated and not a money pit. A new school will be their vehicle to take them to new places, not limit their opportunities, and truly take them anywhere they want to go. Thank you.
Okay. All right, I'll still let you talk, so, okay? Hopefully we're winding down, I think. I don't know what the snow's doing out there. As you people leave, please take your time going home. I know you all don't have far to travel, but take your time. So go ahead, Mr.
Okay, thank you, Bob. I'm John Otash, 40 Dogwood Lane, Newmarket, and I have lived in Newmarket for 62 years, soon to be 63. And I am in support of the Warren article and the new construction. And maybe if you know that I'm a teacher, you're thinking right away he has a vested interest. And you'd be absolutely right if that means a strong personal reason to support that warrant. And let me tell you why. I've been a teacher for 40 years now at Newmarket, and I am sincerely grateful to the residents of Newmarket for that opportunity. I have worked with remarkable students, parents, and educators. My fellow educators have allowed me to see what it means to care about creating new opportunities for people to learn. At Newmarket High School, we have an extraordinary number of AP courses. That stands for Advanced Placement. We beat out some of the bigger schools around us in terms of the numbers that we have in that. And in a lot of those schools, to be in an AP class, a kid has to jump through every hoop you can imagine to be allowed to be in it. At Newmarket, you have to say you want to be in it, and then you're in. We also have a thing called VHS. It's not the old tapes. It's virtual high school. We have a kid at our school that takes Russian. I don't know how many other schools have that, but we can do all that because of the addition that we put in for virtual high school. Of course, you know about the SST, the Seacoast School of Technology, a wonderful program. My students and parents show me just what can be accomplished with an opportunity. And some of the students, in a quick short list of mine that I know of from this school, are now lawyers, engineers, college professors, teachers, coaches, business owners, excellent parents, and grandparents, just to name a tiny few, and the handful of accomplishments of these students. Let me mention a couple more of student accomplishments. One student who graduated last year from Newmarket High School with this opportunity that this town gave him, was able to use his AP classes to eliminate a whole year of his college. And along with that, the cost of a whole year of a college education. Last year in the state testing for 11th graders in math and reading, Newmarket students reached the highest score, it's called Proficient with Distinction, at the highest percentage of any school in the entire state. And I would like to thank Newmarket for creating that opportunity for our kids and for me to be a part of it. My grandparents, my mother, my 4 children, my 3 grandchildren, and I all went to Newmarket schools. So if we go with the plan to make it to like senior housing, I'm in. And I want to thank Newmarket for providing me with that opportunity. In 1967, I was a sophomore at this school when the 3,500 people, probably not that many, voted to add the new part of our school that we're talking about right now. And that was a great opportunity for me and my fellow students. I frequently think about how much I should thank God for the sacrifice that that small town made for us. My pastor often likes to say when he's forced to ask for more money, always thank the parishioners for their past sacrifice and generosity. And so tonight I sincerely thank the people of Newmarket for all you've done for me and my family. I am truly humbled and grateful. So I will support this new school, and I would say to everyone what my pastor says at the end of his speech, thanks for all you have done. I know you will be as generous as you can be. And maybe, just maybe, about 30 or 40 years from now, some other old guy will get up at one of these meetings like me and thank God for the people in that little town in 2014 that gave him an opportunity. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mary Jane Hilton, 275 Grant Road. I have no specific special interests, but rather look at the building of a new school as a commitment and a contribution to the community as a whole. My daughter has already graduated, and my son may see his junior and senior year here. It puts me in a rather independent situation as to why I'm in favor of the school bond. I will be paying for it long after my children have passed through the school, even into my senior years if it's a 30-year bond, and yes, I'm aging myself. But what we know, and I believe we can all agree on, is that the current facility is not an ideal learning environment for the children in this community. Even if we were to fix the fire and life safety issues, the facility is still in need of major work. A large number of the classrooms are undersized now and will never accommodate the growing classes coming in. Any attempts to enlarge or add on would require us to bring the entire building up to the Department of Education standards, which, based on the deficiencies listed on the drawings, looks to be huge and expensive. It looks to be the equivalent of rebuilding the school. The idea of, excuse me, I'm very nervous. The idea of continuing to invest in the current building is a fallacy of sunk cost. It's the idea we can't stop now because if we do, everything we've invested so far will be lost. And I also had an old car. It's like that car you continue to put money into to avoid having a payment, and then comes the day when you realize you could have bought a new car for the money you spent on the repairs. There does come a time when you stop getting back the value of what you put in, and that is what I believe is happening. I don't want to continue to throw my good money after bad. I want my money to be spent wisely on something that will last and something that will provide the community with years of service with minimal maintenance costs. Thank you.
Hey everybody, I'm John Nolan. I live at 42 Lamprey Street, and I will be brief. One of the good things about speaking late is everybody steals your material. With the exception of a single year, I've lived in Newmarket for the last 20 years. My best friend grew up here, graduated here. I saw him. He had Mr. Otash as a teacher. When my family moved to Durham in 1980, but just at Packers Falls, just over the line, and we'd bike into town, and we'd spend our penny candy at Morelli's and L&M, and Markot's Market's long gone. So suffice it to say, I have many, many fond memories of this town. And being a musician, in the years before I got married, I had the good fortune to travel a lot of the world. I made tens upon 20s of dollars playing in beery dives, theaters, and concert venues in Milan and Rotterdam and Amsterdam, in Belgium and in Switzerland, and in much of our own great nation. And what it gave me, in addition to a number of amazing memories, is an appreciation for what it is that we have here. Coming home and walking downtown and looking at the architecture and seeing our rich history and seeing it for what it is, coming from another place. It's an amazing thing. To the point of the school, I'm with a lot of my fellow citizens. I think it's good money after bad. My fear, and eventually it comes down to money, doesn't it? It comes down to money. And I think there are a number of us that think that the smart financial thing to do is to say yes to this school. We must support this school. We must vote for this school. We must talk to our neighbors, our friends, and our families and explain to them what we've done in the past, what we wouldn't give for a $30-something million school with the potential for state to kick in 20%. What we wouldn't give. What we wouldn't give to know 2 years ago that we'd be paying nearly $200,000 more for the water main that we're finally going to put in. What we wouldn't give to have the $400,000 extra they had to put into the science class. Oh, we open up a wall, there's some surprises. We have to spend more than twice what we expected to pay. It's good money after bad. I will leave you to your evening, but as I also had a beater of a car, which we drove into the ground, I had this quote from a song, a little-known band from Festus, Missouri, that I played with in San Antonio, Texas. It's a song called $1,000 Car, and this sums up my fear for this school, for this lovely vehicle, which took us so far, but it's time. It's time to retire it to the junkyard. So the song called $1,000 Car, it says, $1,000 car ain't even gonna roll till you throw at least another 1,000 in the hole. Sink your money in it, and there you are, the owner of a $2,000 $1,000 car. Thank you.
Hi, Jeremy Heidenreich, Bennett Way. Fortunately, my material has not yet been taken, so I will also be brief. But it's been brought up earlier in the meeting about the number of the residents and what demographics they are of. And I'm sure a lot of people heard about the 30% of renters that are here. There's a reason why there are so many renters here. Renters are a great opportunity for any town. They're testing it out. They're saying, hey, is this where I want to live? You don't just jump in and buy generally. I mean, you could. But there's nothing like taking a test drive, right? Now, admittedly, I've lived here since 2005. My test drive is going quite some time now, right? So at some point, I need to choose where I'm going, right? My wife and I continue to have conversations about, what are we going to do? We're saving up for a house. Where do we go? Where do we go? We love Newmarket. We'd love to be here. Listen to what other people have said about, what's going to happen if you build a new school. Are people going to move here? Yes, absolutely. We're watching. I speak to my fellow renters all the time. We live in a nice rental spot. It's great. We talk to them about the school. That's the number one topic, really. They talk about, what are they going to do? Are they going to vote for it? I don't know. Maybe we should be involved, right? And so I don't know how many renters are here tonight, but we are listening, and we're here, and we will vote as well. So just keep that in your mind about the town of Newmarket. Where do you want to be? Does Newmarket want to be a town which just tries to patch holes? We don't really want to be that great. We don't really want to be that bad either, obviously. No one would say that. But we don't want to be exceptional. That's not our view. Is that what Newmarket wants to be? Do we just want to be okay? I don't think we want to be okay. Those who are looking to buy don't want you to just be okay. They want you to be great. They want to look at a school like Exeter and go, yeah, let's go there. Look at the programs. Look at the facilities. That's awesome. But you know what? Exeter doesn't quite have that downtown. It's not quite as nice. It's not quite as community-like. Where do we want to be? Everyone's looking at that. And it's time to make that vote. The school that's not doing so well, that's running down, it's in the news. They want to go to that school that is built for those students. I've got 3 kids now. The last one was actually born here, one of the few in the proud, etc. But we like to make a decision on where to buy that house. So I strongly support this warrant article. Let's vote for it. Newmarket, where do you want to be? Exceptional or just so-so? Think about it.
Okay, folks, I will let you speak. I want to bring the meeting to a close. I think I'm going to let this last speaker speak, and then I have a comment, and I'm going to look to people up here if they have any closing remarks to make. So please, go right ahead.
Hi, Bob Daigle, 43 Elm Street, Newmarket. My kids graduated 5 and 6 years ago, so I don't have any vested interest in a new school. I'm going to support it, though. I've been in town for 35 years. I've seen the town place an awful lot of emphasis in making capital decisions on the short-term tax rate impacts. We did that with the waterworks. It never served us. It was a boondoggle from the get-go. We kicked the new water treatment plant around for several years, and it cost us a couple $1 million in state funding when the state funding dried up. And I'd urge my fellow residents to bite the bullet. It's not going to be fun, but let's do it.
Okay, so my closing thoughts are, I just wish to, I extend a thank you to everybody in the audience. You've all been great. Like I said, I could hear a pin drop in here throughout most of the evening, and I do appreciate your attention, and you all were great to one another. Is there anybody up here at the school board or others that wish to make any closing remarks? So with that, please be safe when you head home. I don't know what's going on out there, and thank you for coming out tonight. Oh, one more thing, please save the date. February 8th, Saturday, is the next date, the deliberative session. The warrant articles will be discussed and can be amended, so there you have it. Save the date. Thanks.